It makes sense that sex feels boring when you're healing the fearful avoidant attachment style, and it doesn't say anything about your relationship or the kind of sex you can be having with this partner in the future. I am Pauline, and I am so happy you are here because we don't talk about real sex often enough, and that can create confusion. There is so much about sex in movies, in songs, in magazines, and um, yet real sex is just something we don't really talk about because what gets how do you say that, romanticized is the passion that you can have in the beginning with a new partner. So that newness can bring intense feelings and intense passion. And when you have the fearful avoidant attachment style, that feels so good because out of all the attachment styles, this one craves intense feelings the most and puts feelings almost on a pedestal. So it makes sense that you then also, like society, like our culture, kind of put that passion that comes from newness on a pedestal. And that makes you feel like everything just should be exciting all the time and it should be effortless and that should last for the rest of your life. And that is just absolutely unrealistic. And it causes you to miss something that is infinitely more beautiful. So the newness of a relationship inevitably wears off. You can't have a new relationship for the rest of your life. But that is hard for when you have the fearful avoidant attachment style because um, you then lose those intense emotions that you kind of got for free because it was new, and those intense feelings. And that can feel like they're never coming back. It can feel like you are just doomed to have boring sex for the rest of your life. No intense feelings, no intense desire. That is not true, but it can feel like that once that newness begins to wear off. Also, maybe this relationship, in a new relationship, you get a lot of reassurance in the beginning. Your partner texts you all the time. They say that you're amazing and that they want to be with you all the time. And when the newness wears off, that usually kind of wears off too. And that can feel threatening. That can feel scary also. And because of that, you kind of retreat or you kind of brace yourself. Um, and that can make sex boring too. And then you usually seek new sensations. As a fearful avoidant, you love new sensations, intense feelings, intense emotions. But after having sex a couple of times, you kind of know what your partner might do. Some can surprise you for the rest of your life, but first of all, that's not really necessary. And second of all, that's maybe also not very realistic. And but the fact that the surprise element is kind of not there anymore because you kind of know what your partner likes, doesn't like, you think, and you know what they might do. That surprise element can also feel like a loss because surprise can lead to more intense feelings and emotions. So the newness inevitably wears off. There is one exception to all of this, and that is that you may have had a relationship in the past that where your partner was emotionally unavailable. And in that relationship, sex felt exciting the whole time. So why was that? Why was that in that relationship and now maybe you're in a healthy relationship and it feels boring? It's very easy to then conclude that it's your partner and it's your relationship, but it's not. Let me explain. Your partner, a past partner that was emotionally unavailable keeps creating intense feelings because you have to work for attention, you have to work for connection. And when you get it, it's almost like a high, it's a euphoria. And it becomes very easy and safe to actually desire that person because you um you want that reassurance, you want that high, you want that connection every now and then you work for it, and then you get it, and there's a high, and therefore you feel that excitement. But in a healthy relationship, it makes sense that it feels boring. Let's get into the 5 reasons why. The first one is you crave intense emotions and feelings, like I just explained, but the newness wears off, and so um all of that kind of gets more mild, and you're thinking, is this it? Is this going to be it forever? And it's not, because there's a doorway, there's a portal that you're missing. We're going to get into that. The second one is, when you're healing, when you're already in your healing journey, healing the fearful avoidant attachment style, you're probably in a healthy relationship or getting ready for a healthy relationship. And that usually means that you don't have to work so hard for attention. You don't have to work so hard for connection. And then that connection is like readily available, because a healthy partner wants to connect and is open to that. And that becomes scary, because this is the third reason: sex equals connection, right? Sex is just one of the most intimate, beautiful ways to connect with your partner. And that is even more so in healthy relationship, because with an emotionally unavailable partner, you will never be able to really, truly, deeply connect and deepen that connection. It's always working really hard for it, and striving really hard to have that moment. And then sex kind of becomes a way to get that attention and get that connection. But when you don't do anything afterwards, the connection is lost again, and then you have to work for it. And that doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good either. But it makes sense when you know that the fearful avoidant has a fear of connection. So you probably have a fear of connection, where a dismissive avoidant generally has a fear of commitment, and the anxious preoccupied a fear of abandonment. The fearful avoidant has a fear of connection. And sex is one of the most intimate ways to connect. And wait, I wanted to say something else about this. I may get back to it. The fourth reason sex feels boring when you're healing the fearful avoidant attachment style is the newness and intensity and passion that we're craving is actually in deepening the connection. But you're scared of connection, and so you kind of stay in limbo. You stay at the surface. You don't really deepen that connection. You might even pull away from it when your partner is trying to connect. You don't want that. It doesn't feel comfortable. It may even feel scary. And so deactivation mechanisms start, connection breaking mechanisms start. You kind of push your partner away. But even then, when you have sex, it probably kind of feels boring, because what you're missing is deepening that connection. And deepening that connection gives an almost endless possibility to have an exciting sex life for the rest of your life. Have an adventure that you go on together, because that's what it is. It really is an adventure. I remember that I used to believe that sex was the best at the beginning of your relationship. And so when I was struggling, when I was in the crash state of the fearful avoidant attachment style, and sex felt boring to me, I was like, this is not good, because it's only going to get worse and worse throughout our life. This should be the best years, the best sex of our lives. And then I interviewed 100 couples who were happily married over 40 years. And they, almost all of them, reassured me, oh no, no. The best sex you have later on in life, because you know yourself so much better. You know what you like, you know what you don't like, you know how your body works, you know what you need, you know what your sexual desires are, and you know what your partner likes and doesn't like. And maybe most importantly, you have the courage to actually express yourself and follow that sexual desire that you have. And I'm not necessarily talking about extreme things, just whatever feels right as a next step when you're getting into intimacy, when it's leading up to it, when you're having sex. So the fifth reason is the fear of rejection or ridicule. When you have the fearful avoidant attachment style, chances are very, very large that when you grew up, you were rejected quite often. You were ridiculed for what you wanted, for what you needed, even. And does it then not make absolute sense that you would be very scared to actually follow your sexual desire? So we all have this natural sexual desire, and that can change over time and throughout your life. But there are things we like, things that we don't like, and there is a beautiful way of following your sexual desire and having your partner follow theirs too, and it kind of becomes like a dance or an adventure of finding out together how you can both follow that sexual connection, that sexual desire. But when you're very scared of expressing yourself, when you're very scared of being found weird, or being found too much or too sexual, you're not going to express or follow or even feel your sexual desire. And that, of course, makes sex boring, because you're not going to allow your sexual desires to be there. And again, it doesn't have to be very extreme. It can just be being present and feeling what would come naturally, where you want to go next. And the more you heal that, the more you become totally okay and comfortable with following your own needs and wants in just life, but also in sex. Now you have a possibility to explore something that has no end. So it's like a adventure, a journey that just keeps expanding and keeps deepening. You have the connection that you can deepen again and again and again, more and more and more. And you have that sexual desire that you can both follow and explore what that means, and what you like and what you don't like. But especially the deepening connection part, well, actually both, will probably be really hard when you're scared of connection. You will just retreat from that. You won't even go there. And that's the portal, that was the door that I was talking about. The portal to sex not being boring, sex being exciting for the rest of your life, is in deepening the connection. But when that's what you're scared of, you're not gonna go there. And then sex becomes boring when you don't feel safe or comfortable even feeling your sexual desires and following them, and being vulnerable, because that is vulnerable. And vulnerability in and of itself is absolutely a trigger for the fearful avoidant attachment style. When you don't feel comfortable with any of that, you don't do it. And that's why sex stays superficial. And that's when it becomes boring, because then it kind of becomes mechanical, and you absolutely know what to expect from your partner because you're doing the same routine again and again. So that exciting sex that you want is not in another relationship. It's in deepening the connection and exploring and following your own sexual desire and your shared sexual connection. And that is something that you can go on a journey forever. There's so much to explore in that. I've heard such beautiful stories from those couples who had been married for over 40 years. And one of the questions I asked them is, how do you keep it exciting? And it's such a thing. Like, maybe it's even more of a saying here in the Netherlands, but I would ask them, how do you keep it exciting for so long? And they say, oh yeah, that's your generation is pretty obsessed with that. But it's not about that. It's not about the new lingerie set that you buy, or finding things that are a thrill. When you're seeking it in that area, nothing wrong with that. It's not a bad thing. It's just that it could possibly be that you don't you're scared to actually deepen the connection and follow that sexual desire and sexual connection. So the fact that sex is boring right now doesn't mean that sex is going to be boring for the rest of your life. When you've healed the fearful avoidant attachment style, it becomes so much easier um, to be vulnerable, to really just be present and show yourself completely, physically and emotionally in a relationship, to not be scared to deepen the connection and feel okay with following that sexual desire and sexual connection. And when you do that, that's when it becomes really interesting. Also, what I hadn't even written down, but um, definitely also plays into this, why sex feels boring, is that fearful avoidants crave intense emotions and feelings. So the passion and the newness is amazing. Um, but on the other hand, you're also very scared of a lot of sensations and a lot of feelings. And sex can be so vulnerable and it can be such a beautiful thing. But when you're really having connected sex, which is the best sex you will have in a long term relationship, it brings up a lot of things. It brings up a lot of fears and maybe pain and sadness. And when you don't know how to be present with that, and maybe you even judge it and think it shouldn't be here, I should just enjoy this, I should only feel desire and longing, then it makes sense that you kind of push those feelings away and sex becomes boring, because then you cannot really feel pleasure, you can't really surrender to pleasure. And pleasure is something different than thrill and just intense feelings. So it's pretty much the difference between junk food and having a really nourishing, beautiful meal. Building a exciting, beautiful, passionate sex life together that will last decades, it does take work, like a beautiful, nourishing meal takes work, but it does nourish you. And you can have endless variety. You can change so much, and you can actually be surprised by your partner even when you've been together for 40 years. I've heard so many stories about that, and that's so what I wish for you, to get out of that myth of it always has to feel like that intense passion that you either had in the beginning of this relationship or that you've had with an emotionally unavailable partner, because those intense feelings are junk food, in the sense that the intense feelings mostly came from the reassurance that you were good enough, or the approval that you got in that moment, the high of it. But that really didn't have anything to do with your partner. It didn't even really have anything to do with you, because it's mostly trauma based. And then on the other side is um, this beautiful connection that you actually share with another human. But when you're healing and you haven't really healed that area yet, that part yet, the negative associations you have around connection, sexual desire, everything that comes with it, that becomes really hard to then have sex that is boring. So I wish for you to experience that nourishing feeling, that just feels so much more rich than the intense feelings that you had with an emotionally unavailable partner could ever give you. So these are 5 reasons sex now feels boring when you're healing the fearful avoidant attachment style. And when you're in a healthy relationship, that is actually a good thing. It makes sense that it feels boring. It's not necessarily a good thing that it feels boring, but I mean, it makes sense that it feels boring. And the good thing is that when you have a healthy foundation, that's when you can build. You can't build a beautiful decade-long, if that's what you want, relationship or marriage on an unstable foundation. So you need a healthy, safe relationship to start building, and to be able to really look at those fears and that sadness and whatever may come up. It doesn't have to, but whatever may come up. So it's just the myth of sex having to be exciting, and that happening without any work is absolutely a myth. And I think it causes you to stay in that superficial layer of sex that makes it feel boring when there is like so much more that you can explore when you know where to look, what the portal is, what the door is, and now you know it's in deepening the connection and in sexual desire. So find a way to heal that. Find a way to heal those associations. If you want help, Healed and Happy is here in my online program where we actually do that. We go to the roots of the fearful avoidant attachment style um, in general, and that also helps a lot here. Um, and you deserve a sex life that is beautiful and exciting and passionate. It's just, it looks different than what you think, and it feels better than you can imagine right now. And that's what I wish for you. I'm very curious if you recognize any of this. Let me know in the comments below. I always love to hear from you. And as always, I am happy you are here, and I will see you in the next one. Healed and Happy is a tailor-made online program where me and my team personally guide you through healing the roots of the fearful avoidant attachment style.